They said it was just a simple Christmas party. No gifts, no pressure, just family. But that night, standing under the flicker of white lights and the smell of cinnamon candles, I realized that love, real love, can vanish quietly while you're still smiling. My name is Emily Carter, I'm 33 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that being generous made me a good person. I paid the bills no one else remembered, filled the fridge when it was empty, and covered the subscriptions my parents forgot to cancel: Spotify, Hulu, Netflix, even the cloud storage my sister used to store her influencer videos. I thought that's what daughters did. I thought kindness was currency. But the truth is, it was just silence disguised as duty. I live in Denver, a city that glows cold in December. The kind of place where the snow looks beautiful from the window but stings your skin the moment you step outside. I'd spent the entire week balancing year-end accounts at the bank, watching numbers slide into neat columns while my own life felt completely out of balance. Still, I was looking forward to Christmas Eve, because this year, Dad had said something that actually sounded peaceful. Let's keep it simple this year. No gifts. 6 words that felt like a relief. I remember smiling at my phone when he texted it to the family group chat. Finally, I thought. No competition. No spending I couldn't afford. Just conversation, laughter, and maybe, some warmth that didn't have a receipt attached. Mom reacted with a thumbs-up emoji. My sister, Laurel, replied with a sparkle and a heart. And I, like the fool I was, believed them. That evening, I baked sugar cookies from scratch. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and memory. I used my grandmother's old metal cutters, stars, trees, reindeer. I even wrapped the tins in ribbon. The edges came out uneven, but I told myself that's what made them special. Something real in a family that's all about show, I whispered to myself. When I pulled up to my parents' house, snow dusted the lawn like powdered sugar. The porch light was yellow and soft, but inside, everything gleamed too bright: matching sweaters, shiny ornaments, and a tree that looked like it belonged in a store window. I hung my coat on the rack and stepped into the living room. Emily. Mom greeted, her voice too high, too sweet. You made cookies again? You're such a dear. She took the tins from me without looking at them twice and set them on the side table. My father was sipping coffee, the mug blocking most of his face, but I saw the same look he always gave me: polite, distracted affection, like he was still trying to remember my role in this family. And then came Laurel. Late, of course. She arrived like a movie star entering a scene, hair perfect, coat expensive, the kind of entrance that made heads turn even in your own house. Her husband Corey followed, carrying boxes wrapped in gold paper, each one screaming, "This is not simple." I smiled, a reflex from years of practice. Hey, you made it. She kissed the air beside my cheek. Barely. Traffic was insane. Anyway, you look cozy. Cozy. That word again. It sounded like pity dipped in glitter. We gathered around the tree, hot chocolate steaming, candles flickering. For a second, it almost felt like the warmth I'd been craving, until Laurel clapped her hands together. Okay, she announced. So, I know we said no presents this year, but... She paused dramatically, pulling out her phone. I had to show you this brand collab. They insisted I post my unboxing tonight. I blinked. Wait. I thought we weren't. Before I could finish, she tore into the first box, fake snow flying. Inside was a brand new iPhone, gleaming like a diamond in the lights. Latest model, she bragged. Camera's insane. Look, 3 lenses. Perfect for my content. Mom gasped. Oh, it's beautiful. Dad nodded approvingly. She's got that spark, he said. I stood there, clutching my cup like it was an anchor. My cookies sat ignored. Then came box number 2, a designer handbag, the kind that cost more than my monthly rent. Laurel lifted it like a trophy. Corey laughed. You deserve it, babe. You've worked hard. Worked hard. I almost choked on the irony. Because I knew exactly which hard work had paid for that. Mine. Last month, a $1,548 charge had hit my card for a camera lens purchase. Laurel had brushed it off when I asked. Oh, that's just business stuff, she said. It'll help me grow my brand. And then came the third box, a diamond bracelet. The light caught it, scattering tiny constellations across the room. Mom actually clapped. That's my girl, she said, not even pretending to look at me. Something inside me cracked, not loud enough for anyone else to hear, but I felt it. A soundless fracture. I wanted to scream, do you not see me? But all I did was smile, the same way I had every Christmas, every birthday, every family dinner when I picked up the check, just this once. Laurel snapped selfies with her new gifts. Mom adjusted her sweater for the camera. Dad lifted his cup again. And I stood there, holding a tray of cold cookies, realizing that I wasn't part of this family, I was their infrastructure. The music, the streaming, the Wi-Fi, the smiles. All of it built on my quiet yes. When Laurel laughed and said, "This is going viral," I knew something had changed in me. The laughter in that room sounded like static. My heart beat in my ears. My fingers trembled. I looked at the clock, 8:17 p.m. And I walked out. No speech. No explosion. No dramatic farewell. Just the soft click of my boots on the hardwood floor and the cold night air swallowing the warmth behind me. Outside, the sky was white and endless. My breath made ghosts in the air. I walked to my car, keys shaking in my palm, and whispered, "I'm done. Done being the provider. Done being the background. Done being invisible." I didn't cry on the drive home. I just thought of every monthly charge, every late night favor, every little piece of myself I'd handed away to keep them comfortable. And when I reached my apartment, I opened my laptop. Spotify. Password change. Remove family members. Done. Hulu. Sign out all devices. Reset. Done. Cloud storage. Revoke access. Done. Credit card. Call the bank. Hold music playing carols, like a cruel joke. When the agent picked up, she said, "How can I help you tonight, Ms. Carter?" And for the first time in years, I answered honestly. I need to remove some people who don't belong here. That night, I slept for 5 hours straight without dreaming. By morning, my phone was a war zone, 29 missed calls, a dozen texts. "Laurel, you locked me out of Spotify? Are you serious? You're ruining my workflow. Mom, this is embarrassing. Fix it. Dad, put the accounts back. We need them. Corey, grow up. You'll regret this." I stared at the screen. Then I set the phone face down and made coffee. It was the most peaceful morning I'd had in years. Mom pointed at me before I could even breathe. "She's locked us out of everything. Spotify, Hulu, our bank access, she's being spiteful." Her voice cracked with the performance of a lifetime. Dad folded his arms. "We're her parents. She owes us a little respect." The word "owes" stabbed deeper than I expected. That I'd spent years paying that invisible debt, and apparently, the balance was still due. "I didn't steal anything," I said quietly. "The accounts are in my name. I pay for them." Mom's face twisted. "Family doesn't nickel and dime each other." The younger officer glanced between us. "Ma'am, if the accounts belong to her, that's a civil matter." Not criminal. Dad exhaled through his nose. See? She's tearing this family apart. That's when another car pulled into the driveway, tires crunching through ice. It was Mandy, my oldest friend, the kind of person who shows up without being asked. She jumped out, scarf flying like a flag of rescue. She didn't even hesitate. Everything okay here? The taller officer stepped aside as she came up. She looked at me first. You good? I nodded, small, shaky, but real. She turned to my parents with the kind of calm that can end earthquakes. Emily's fine. She's just enforcing boundaries. That's legal and healthy. Mom blinked, thrown off. Who even are you? I'm the friend who's seen her cry over your text messages, Mandy said softly. The silence that followed was its own storm. Dad cleared his throat. This is ridiculous. Emily, come on. Just unlock the accounts. We can fix this. I'm done fixing things, I said. I'm done being your accountant, your safety net, your background music. The words surprised even me. They came out steady, not angry. Truth always sounds calmer than fear. The officers exchanged a glance, then nodded. Seems like you've got this handled, the taller one said. If it's all under her name, there's no crime here. Mom gasped. No crime? You call destroying your own family no crime? They tipped their hats politely. Ma'am, you have a good day. Then they left, red and blue lights fading into daylight, leaving only the sound of my mother's disbelief. Mandy squeezed my arm. You did the right thing. Mom's eyes glistened, not with sadness, but fury. You've always been difficult. Dad added, we don't deserve this. You're making a mistake. Maybe, I said. Or maybe for once, I'm not. They stared at me for a moment longer, as if memorizing a stranger. Then they turned, trudging through the snow back to their car. The door closed behind them with a sigh of finality. Inside, the silence was different now, no longer heavy, just clean. Mandy made tea while I sat on the couch trying to locate my heartbeat. She handed me a mug. Drink. You'll shake less. I laughed under my breath. I think the shaking is permanent. She smiled. No, it's withdrawal. From what? From being everyone's backbone. That landed harder than I expected. She leaned back. When I cut my parents off their accounts last year, they called me selfish. For months, I thought they were right. Then I realized they were just loud. I stared into the steam of my tea. Does it get easier? It gets quiet. Then quiet becomes peace. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But later, when she left and the apartment grew still again, I felt the old ache sneak back in, like a ghost testing the locks. For 33 years, my identity had been service. Who was I now, without their needs to fill? That question haunted me for days. The next week unfolded like slow motion. Every morning my phone buzzed with new messages. Mom's guilt trips. Dad's commands. Laurel's tantrums. Corey's insults disguised as jokes. Spotify won't log in. Do you know the Hulu password? Why would you cut us off right before Christmas? I ignored them all. But ignoring doesn't mean not feeling. Each vibration was a tiny knock on the door I just shut. By Thursday, the tone had changed. Laurel posted on Instagram, some people can't handle other success. Toxic energy is real. She didn't tag me, but she didn't have to. Her followers did the math. DMs trickled in from strangers. You should support your sister. You jealous much? It hurt more than I wanted to admit. But pain has this strange alchemy. If you sit with it long enough, it starts turning into clarity. I began to see my family's pattern for what it was, a pyramid built on guilt. The more I gave, the more they needed. And the higher they climbed, the smaller I became. That weekend, I opened my bank app and just looked. For the first time, every dollar belonged to me. No pending charges, no shared payments, no family add-ons. It felt surreal, like walking into a house that finally locked from the inside. I called Mandy. "You were right," I told her. "The quiet isn't empty." She chuckled. "It's roomy, huh?" "Roomy," I repeated. That word tasted like freedom. Sunday afternoon, I decided to clean, not the kind of cleaning where you chase dust, the kind where you exorcise history. That I gathered old paperwork, bank statements, credit card bills, receipts for all the little rescues I'd performed over the years. There it was, the $700 vet bill that had actually been a grooming package. The $500 car repair Laurel needed at midnight for a photo shoot. The streaming service charges, one after another, for 3 different accounts. Pages of proof that I'd confused generosity with servitude. I fed them through the shredder slowly, strip by strip, watching the past become confetti. Each sound, RRRRRRRR, felt like another piece of myself being reclaimed. When the shredder jammed, I laughed out loud. Maybe even freedom has its limits. Then I made a cup of cocoa, wrapped myself in a blanket, and watched the snow fall outside my window. It struck me that I'd never noticed how quiet snow really is until now, how it lands without applause, soft and deliberate. That night, I wrote in my journal. They took advantage because I let them. But I let them because I thought that was love. I underlined the word thought. Twice. Monday morning, reality came knocking again, this time through the cracks of the digital world. Laurel had lost a brand deal, apparently. The video she was supposed to post didn't meet the sponsor's quality standards. Without my paid streaming accounts, she couldn't access the editing tools or background music she'd always used. Her public post was vague, something about technical setbacks, but her private message to me was not. "You've sabotaged my career. I hope you're proud of yourself." I typed a reply, then deleted it. She wanted a fight. What she got was silence. 2 days later, Mom left a voicemail in her most fragile tone. "Emily, we can't afford all these new bills. Your father and I are trying to figure it out, but we're not good with technology. Could you please just help us set things up again?" For years, that voice had been my kryptonite, but now, I heard the manipulation under the tremble. They weren't helpless, they were comfortable being helped. I deleted the message. Then another came, Dad this time, irritation replacing charm. "You're making life harder for everyone. I hope your little rebellion was worth it." I pressed delete again, every deletion felt like a prayer. That weekend, Mandy and I met at a small diner off Colfax, the kind with chipped mugs and waitresses who call you honey. "How's it feel?" she asked between bites of pancakes. "Like I'm finally living in my own house," I said. "Expensive rent, huh?" "Freedom usually is." We laughed, and the sound didn't echo. It stayed, warm and present. Then she pulled a small notebook from her bag. "I want to show you something. My monthly budget. No family expenses. Learned that the hard way." I looked at the neat handwriting, columns for rent, groceries, savings, self-care. Simple. Balanced. Something clicked. Numbers had always been my language, but I'd only used them to manage other people's chaos. What if I used them to build my peace? That night, I opened my laptop again and created a spreadsheet titled My Future. Line by line, I filled it in $300 a month into savings, $200 for an online art course I dreamed of taking, $500 for a weekend at the Oregon coast, salt air, quiet trails, $50 for a new sketchbook and pencils, even $30 for a meditation app. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about proof that I could choose where my energy went. When I finished, I leaned back and whispered, "Every dollar is mine." For the first time in years, I believed it. But freedom comes with aftershocks. The next morning, a neighbor texted me, "Your parents got a final notice from the electric company. They're panicking." I stared at the message. Old me would have grabbed the phone, called the company, fixed it in 10 minutes. New me put the phone face down and took another sip of coffee. It wasn't cruelty. It was boundary. By evening, Mom sent another message, "Please, we can't afford this without you." Dad followed with, "We'll talk when you're ready to be reasonable." Reasonable. That word again, their code for obedient. I didn't reply. Instead, I watched the sunset paint my apartment gold. That it was the same sky they lived under, but for once, it belonged to me. And in that light, I finally understood something. Love isn't measured by what you give up. It's proven by what you refuse to surrender. I used to think revenge looked loud, smashed plates, shouted truths, an explosion that left everyone stunned, but real revenge, it's quiet. That it's the peace that blooms when you finally stop playing their game. A week after Christmas, Denver was buried in snow. The streets hummed softly under white blankets, as if the whole city was whispering, "Start over." That I woke to sunlight on the blinds and realized, nobody had texted me yet. Payment due. No, help us reset the password. No, Emily, could you just, silence, and it was beautiful. I made coffee, strong enough to taste like courage, and opened my laptop. Laurel's face filled the screen. Her latest Instagram story was chaos, her eyes puffy, voice trembling in that dramatic way she perfected. She talked about a technical issue ruining a big project, about losing an important brand partnership. The comments flooded in with sympathy, hearts, and fire emojis, but beneath the performance, I saw the truth. Her empire, the one built on my money, was cracking. Later that day, Mandy sent me a screenshot of an industry blog. Influencer L. Carter loses major skincare contract after failing to deliver sponsored content. The reason? Unmet deadlines, inconsistent quality. That I could almost hear Laurel blaming the universe, never her own dependency. I didn't feel smug. That I just felt free. For years, I'd been the invisible scaffolding that kept their lives upright. Now, watching the structure bend without me, I saw how fragile it really was. They weren't victims of my boundaries. They were victims of their own neglect. That night, Mom left another voicemail. Her tone was brittle, half guilt, half command. "Emily, your father and I can't figure out how to set up Hulu again. It's asking for a card number. We don't know what to do." I pictured her sitting at the kitchen table, receipts scattered, Dad pacing, both of them drowning in minor inconveniences that once would have been my emergencies. That I almost laughed, then I caught myself. Not cruel laughter, just disbelief at how simple the problem was when you stripped away the drama. They could do it, they just didn't want to. I deleted the voicemail and opened my budgeting sheet instead. Every row felt like a tiny rebellion. $300, savings, $200, art class, $500, trip, $50, pencils. My new religion was accountability, and I was finally my own priest. That weekend, I went to a small art supply store downtown. The bell over the door chimed like punctuation. That a woman behind the counter smiled. "Looking for something in particular?" "Pencils," I said, then paused. "Good ones. For beginners who forgot they were artists." She handed me a tin wrapped in paper that smelled faintly of cedar. That I bought it without hesitation, the kind of purchase that used to make me feel guilty but now felt sacred. On the way home, I stopped by a cafe and drew the view from the window. People laughing, bundled in scarves, the steam from their cups rising like soft ghosts. That my lines were crooked, but they were mine. When I got home, my phone buzzed again. "Laurel," this time with a long paragraph. "You've made me look bad. Brands are asking questions. You know how hard I've worked for this. Why would you destroy me like this?" I read it once, then twice. Destroy. She'd used my money, my credit, my patience. All I'd done was turn off the faucet. I put the phone down and whispered to the empty room, "I didn't destroy you, Laurel. I just stopped financing your illusion." Then I turned off notifications completely. The silence that followed felt like a cathedral. Days turned into weeks, January melted into February, the snow softening into puddles that reflected long afternoons. Mom and Dad eventually figured out how to pay their bills. Or rather, they hired someone that a mutual friend from their church texted me, "Your parents are working with an accountant now. They're overwhelmed, but learning." I smiled. Progress by necessity. Meanwhile, Corey was imploding in slow motion. Another mutual friend mentioned he'd been calling around, asking for loans. 500 here, 1,000 there. Nobody bit. He'd worn out his charm. For a man who treated entitlement like oxygen, scarcity must have felt like suffocation. Laurel's content grew erratic. One day she posted about self-care and boundaries. The next, she posted a photo of a luxury handbag with a caption begging sponsors for collabs. Her follower count dipped quietly, like sand sliding through fingers that I didn't check every day, just enough to remind myself that reality always reclaims what's built on lies. But life has this strange rhythm. Once you make space by removing chaos, something softer moves in. For me, it was art. Every Saturday, I took the light rail downtown to an art studio, a converted warehouse with huge windows and the smell of paint and possibility. The instructor, a gentleman named Reed, never asked why I was there. That he just handed me a charcoal stick and said, "Start with what you feel, not what you see." So I did that. I drew shapes that looked like storms, like freedom, like walls crumbling from the inside. Sometimes I cried while sketching, tears blurring the lines that no one judged. The room was full of quiet healers pretending to be students. One afternoon, Reed walked by my easel and said, "You draw silence well." I smiled. "I've had a lot of practice." Around that time, something strange started happening. People at work noticed I'd changed, not my clothes or hair, but my energy. That I said no more often. That I stopped volunteering to fix others' mistakes. My boss even said, half jokingly, "You're calm now." It's intimidating. Calm as intimidation. That made me laugh. Because calm wasn't the absence of fear anymore. That it was the presence of boundaries. I began to reclaim small pieces of myself I didn't even know I'd lost. Morning walks without checking messages, cooking dinner for one without guilt, buying flowers for no reason. That I started keeping my phone in another room at night. That first, the silence felt too big, like standing in an empty church after service, but soon it felt like home. Then came the call I didn't expect. It was late February. The evening had that golden Denver hue, a sunset that turns even apartment windows into stained glass. My phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in weeks. Laurel. For a second, I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. That I answered. Her voice was small, stripped of its usual gloss. I messed up. I stayed quiet. I lost another contract. Corey's looking for work. Mom and Dad are freaking out. Everything's falling apart. She paused, waiting for my usual rescue. That I didn't offer it. I'm not calling for money, she added quickly. I don't know what to do. Something inside me softened, not enough to crumble, but enough to listen. What do you want to do, Laurel? I asked. I don't know, she said, voice cracking. For so long, my whole life was about looking successful. Now I just feel fake. I took a breath. You can start over. But you'll have to do it without someone else's credit card. A bitter laugh escaped her. I deserve that. You don't deserve punishment, I said. Just accountability. Silence on the line, then, barely audible, I'm sorry. It wasn't dramatic. That it wasn't even complete, but it was real. I hope you mean that, I whispered. I do, she said. I'll let you go. The call ended before I could decide whether to feel relief or grief, maybe both. That night, I couldn't sleep, not from guilt, from clarity. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about letting them back in. That it was about letting myself move forward without carrying the weight of what they'd done. I walked to the window. The city lights shimmered like scattered gold, and in that stillness, I whispered the words I'd never dared say aloud. I forgive you, but I'm keeping the door locked. The morning after Laurel's call, Denver woke up glassy and bright. the snow on the rooftops looked like clean sheets, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had a bed made just for me. That I poured coffee, stood by the window, and noticed a small thing I'd never given myself before: permission. Permission to move slowly. My phone lay quiet on the counter, no red bubbles, no emergencies. That I stared at it like a door that finally learned how to lock. Then it buzzed once. That a text from Laurel. Can we meet? I'll come to you. No asks. I promise. I let the message sit for a while. Not to punish her. To listen to my body. That it didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. So I replied, okay. 3 p.m. Platt Park. The cafe on the corner. I spent the morning cleaning in soft circles, folding a blanket, washing a mug, watering the 2 plants I hadn't killed. Funny how care returns when you stop bleeding out in 10 directions. That at 2:40 I put on a wool coat and the red scarf Mandy once called my cape. Walking to the light rail, I breathed like a new student of oxygen. The cafe was warm, brown wood and foggy glass. Laurel arrived 5 minutes late, still Laurel, but smudged at the edges. No camera in her hand. No performance lighting in her eyes, just my sister, winter-chapped and blinking. Hey, she said, voice small. Hey, I echoed. We ordered, hers a tea she'd never have chosen before, mine a black coffee because I was trying to know what, just enough, tasted like. When we sat, something strange happened. No phones on the table. That it felt ceremonial. She exhaled. I've spent weeks composing speeches and they all sounded like PR. I'm not good at honest, but I'd like to try. I waited. Waiting is a skill I learned the hard way, how to leave space without filling it with rescue. I was cruel, she said. And lazy. I used your kindness like a power outlet, plug in when I needed juice, yank it out when I was done. Her mouth twisted. I could call it survival, or pressure, or the industry, but it was entitlement. I told myself your money was our money because family. But what I meant was I didn't want to carry my own weight. I let the words land. They didn't bounce off me like before. They went in, not as knives, but as naming. I'm sorry, she said, and there was no mascara glinting apology, just a tired woman who'd run out of script. I took a breath. Thank you, for saying it like that. Then I surprised myself. I'm sorry, too. Her eyes snapped up. For what? For training you to expect it, I said. I said yes so many times you forgot there was a no. I confused being reliable with being lovable. That wasn't fair to either of us. We sat in the small hum of the cafe. Cups. Steam. The cold tapping the window like a polite guest. I'm not asking you to fix anything, she said. I just needed you to hear me say it. I heard you, I said. And I need you to hear me say this, my boundaries aren't a punishment. They're my life. The accounts will stay mine. The card will stay mine. My yes has to belong to me again. She nodded, quick, almost grateful, I figured. I brought you something, though. She slid a small envelope across the table. Inside, 3 neatly printed screenshots, deposit confirmations to her own accounts for services she'd used on mine. Not the whole universe. But real dollars. Real movement. It's not all, she said. I'm still paying down stuff. But I wanted to start where I should have, by owning it. Something in me unclenched. Not forgiveness as a gate flung open. Forgiveness as a window tilted, letting in air. We talked like sisters who used to share a room and lost the map. Awkward, tender, careful. She told me Corey was looking for work that came with bosses and time clocks. She admitted she didn't know what her brand meant without the constant churn of looking richer than she felt. That I told her I'd started drawing, badly, joyfully. She laughed, genuinely. You always had artist hands. I remember, the way you used to trace the light on the wall. Maybe I'm tracing it again, I said. When we stood to leave, she hugged me, unscripted, unposed. "I'm not asking you to come back," she whispered. "But, could you stand nearby?" "I can stand where I don't disappear," I said. She smiled into my scarf. "That works." We parted with light inside our coats, mine steady, hers flickering towards steadiness. That I didn't cry when I walked home. I didn't float either. I just existed, an underrated miracle. Days folded into a new shape. That my parents, I learned from a church friend, had hired Rosa, a local accountant with a patient voice. Rosa taught them how to enroll in autopay and how to write passwords somewhere other than Emily's brain. At first, Mom complained, "It's all so complicated," but necessity is a strict teacher. Dad grumbled about fees and learned about budgets the way men of his generation learned to dance, stiff, but moving. That I stayed out of it, on purpose. Curiosity never again became caretaking. Mandy and I kept our small rituals. Wednesday soup at the place on Broadway, Saturday morning texts trading sunrise photos like postcards. Every class at the studio gave me a new way to name my quiet. Reed would murmur, "Leave white where the light lives," and I wanted to carry that sentence into every room of my life. Work changed in invisible ways. People stopped assuming I'd catch what they dropped. When someone tried a last minute, "Could you just," I'd smile, "I can't this week. Here's a checklist you can follow." The first time I said it, I waited for the backlash. It didn't come. Turns out, competence paired with boundaries earns respect that martyrdom never does. I adjusted small dials inside myself that nobody else could see. That I ate when I was hungry. Slept when I was tired. Turned my phone off at 10. That I said, "I need a minute," and took it. That I allowed joy without a receipt. Flowers because they existed, not because they made sense. One Sunday, I took the train to Golden and hiked alone. The trail wound up and up like a sentence that doesn't want to end. At the top I sat and sketched the morning, pale blue sky, a hawk's long sentence through it, the city far enough to be gentle. That I wrote in my notebook, "I am not a subscription. I am a person with a password no one else gets." Corny, maybe. True, definitely. March thawed. April softened, the first tulips pushed up like small hands volunteering for life, and then a card arrived in my mailbox, handwriting I knew well, my mother's. That I held it like it might bite. Inside. "Emily, we're learning. We have a budget now. Rosa says we can handle it. I didn't realize how much we leaned on you until we had to stand. I still think families should help each other, but I understand now that help isn't the same as dependence." That we made a small donation to the library in your name. That felt right, because you've always been the one who reads instructions and then teaches the rest of us. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know we're trying. Love, Mom. No manipulation. No hook, just sentences walking on their own feet. That I sat with it. Not triumphant. Not cynical, just moved in a cautious way, like a chair that finally doesn't wobble. I didn't rush to call. Instead, I mailed back a postcard I'd bought at the art museum. On the back, I wrote, "Thank you. Keep going. I'm okay over here." Short. True. A week later, Dad texted, 2 words, "We're learning." I stared at the screen and realized how rarely men his age practice admitting that. I typed back, "Good." It was all we needed. One Thursday evening, Laurel asked if she could come to one of my classes, not to film it, just to be in the room. She sat at the back and smudged a line of charcoal across paper until something like a horizon appeared. Afterward, she held up her hands, gray and delighted. I forgot how fun it is to be bad at something and live. We laughed, sisters, not staff. On the way out, she stopped in the doorway. "I'm leaving that agency," she said. "I don't like who I am when I chase their version of success." She took a breath. "I might freelance smaller. I might teach teens how to edit videos without all the dumb pressure." "Is that ridiculous?" "It sounds like oxygen," I said. "Do the thing that gives you air." She nodded, that new little nod she'd learned, a nod that means I'll try, not I'll promise. June rolled in on sandal feet. I saved enough to book the Santa Fe weekend I'd put in my spreadsheet, train down, 2 nights in a simple casita, a museum pass, and time. The desert didn't look like Denver. It looked like silence made of color. I sketched adobe and shadows, doorways that made darkness look like home, and skies so wide the mind grows polite in their presence. In a bookstore, I found a second-hand collection of Georgia O'Keeffe's letters. She wrote about bones and sky like they were next of kin. On the train back, I underlined a line that felt like me learning to speak. I have been absolutely terrified every moment of my life, and I have never let it stop me from doing a single thing I wanted to do. I pressed my palm to the page. Me too, I whispered. Now. When I returned, Mandy hugged me at the station, then stepped back to look at my face the way good friends check weather. You look roomy, she said. That I laughed. I think that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. We walked to get tacos and talked about nothing and God and how both sometimes were the same shoes. That I told her about Mom's card, Dad's 2-word text, Laurel's charcoal horizon. She nodded like a teacher signing off on a science fair project titled The Soul. Observed. Look at you, she said. Building a life. Not a bank. Summer in Denver tastes like peaches and asphalt and distant thunderstorms bragging about themselves. That I hung laundry on drying racks by the window and sketched my own apartment. The lamp's soft triangle on the rug, the stubborn plant refusing to die, the shoe I never put away, domestic scenes, holy in their smallness. Work was work, but quieter in my head. That I mentored a new hire and didn't overgive. That I negotiated a fair raise with sentences I wrote and rehearsed and honored. That I learned that advocating for yourself isn't the same as begging. It's the opposite of begging. That it's prayer with a spine. Sometimes the old ache knocked, like a childhood friend who doesn't know you moved. On those nights, I did 3 things. Made tea, put my phone in the other room, drew whatever the day had given me, badly if needed. That IT worked better than virtue. One Friday, I received an invite, family barbecue, late July, bring dessert. That my chest fluttered, the kind of ping that used to mean danger. That I looked at the invite again. No instructions hidden as niceness. No, could you pick up, or, we'll need your card for, just bring dessert. I texted back, I'll bring cookies. No commitments beyond that. Mom replied with a smile emoji and a sentence that made me sit down. That's perfect. The barbecue was strangely normal. Dad flipped burgers like he'd known how all along. Rosa's budget had taught them margins and marinating. How planning makes everything kinder. Laurel arrived in jeans and a ponytail, carrying a thrift store bowl of potato salad like an offering. There were moments, old reflexes, when I reached for my card in my mind, then I looked at the sky, took a breath, and let the reflex pass. After dessert, Mom and I found ourselves alone by the hydrangeas that refused to bloom blue. She cleared her throat. I still think, she started, and I braced, families should help each other. She looked at me. I also think. I confused help with control. I'm sorry for the names I called you. No. I swallowed. Thank you, I said. We didn't hug. We didn't make a movie out of a slow moment. That we just stood near each other, and didn't break anything. That felt like adulthood. On the drive home, I didn't narrate the evening with caveats. That I let it be what it was, better, not perfect. August turned the city copper. Laurel texted occasionally, photos of the community center where she'd pitched a beginner's editing class. 16 signed up, she wrote once, adding a selfie with charcoal smudges on her wrist. That I sent back a photo of my sketchbook, the drawing of an empty chair with light across it. That we were sending each other our spaces. That's how you rebuild, square foot by square foot. In September, I hosted Mandy for dinner and cooked something that tasted like 2 women who saved themselves. That we ate on the floor because chairs felt too formal for triumph. Between bites, I asked, do you ever grieve the girl who spent years being the helpful one? She nodded. I grieve her, and then I thank her. She kept me alive long enough to become this person. We clinked glasses to the helpful girls who learned to be whole. October. The anniversary of the old life breaking. That I took the day off and rode the bus with no destination, just to watch Denver wear its golds and coppers like a parade. At a stop near Wash Park, a little boy waved at me with both hands, the way children wave at trains and miracles. That I waved back. That it felt like the universe was saying, keep going. On a whim, I got off and walked around the lake. Geese argued like old married couples. Leaves performed their glorious surrender. That I sat on a bench and wrote this sentence. I don't need them to change for me to live differently. Then I added another, I can love from a distance that keeps my heart audible. I went home and taped the page to my fridge. Every morning after that, I read it like a vitamin. And then, because life enjoys circles, December tiptoed back in our group chat, quiet for most of the year, woke up with simple logistics, Christmas Eve. 6 p.m. cookies welcome. No gifts. Real this time, Laurel replied with 3 stars and a promise. Dad sent a thumbs up, his favorite punctuation. Mom added a photo of a spreadsheet titled Holiday Meals. I stared at the screen and laughed, the good kind, round and warm. We were not a different family. We were the same family, practicing new verbs. On Christmas Eve, I baked the same sugar cookies, edges still imperfect. This time, I licked the spoon and didn't apologize to the AIR.AT. The house, the tree leaned like it always had, but the room felt balanced in a way money can't buy. Laurel hugged me at the door. I brought board games, she said. No sponsors. Corey, new job, new humility, offered to do dishes before there were any. Mom's sweater had flour on it for the right reasons. Dad burned the garlic bread and laughed like a man who finally knew dinner wasn't a test. At one point, Mom touched my wrist. We really did keep it simple, she whispered. That I smiled. I noticed. She swallowed and nodded toward the side table. My cookies, half gone. Your stars are the first to go, she said. That I didn't look to see if she meant it. I just believed her, softly. Later, after cocoa and a game that made everyone terrible at drawing, I stepped outside for air. The night was sharp and clear. Across the street, someone's inflatable penguin bowed in the wind like a clumsy priest. The porch light painted a little halo on the snow. That I stood in it and thought about the girl who walked out a year ago with a heart cracking in silence. That I wanted to tell her everything I've written here. That the police would leave, that the shouting would turn into weather, that the spreadsheets would become art, that forgiveness would feel like an open window, not an unlocked door, that love could survive at a range, that she would learn the difference between being needed and being known. I put my hand on the railing, cold, honest metal. Inside, I could hear Laurel telling Dad a story about the teen who edited his first video on a borrowed Chromebook and cried. Mom laughed from the kitchen, an unarmed sound that I breathed, in, out, and in that rhythm I found words that belonged to me. I didn't lose a family, I whispered. I lost a job I was never hired to do. The door opened behind me. Mandy, late as planned, a container of something that smelled like cinnamon peace. She bumped my shoulder. You good? I smiled. Roomy, I said. She grinned. That's my girl. We went back inside, the same house, the same tree, the same people trying in slightly better ways, and me, no longer the scaffolding, just a woman with cookies, and a spine made of quiet. When the laughter inside drifted into smaller pockets and the music softened, I slipped my coat back on and stepped outside again. The sky was the deep navy that only December understands, cold enough to sting, clear enough to heal. Through the window, I could still see them, my family, framed by the warmth of the house. Laurel wiping flour off Mom's sleeve, Dad clumsily pouring cocoa, Corey pretending he understood how to use the dishwasher. That it was messy, human, imperfect, and somehow enough. A year ago, I would have stood there counting injustices, measuring who had thanked me and who hadn't, but tonight, I just watched them the way you might watch an old movie, the kind that once made you cry but now makes you smile because you know how it ends. For the first time, I wasn't outside because I'd been pushed away. That I was outside because I'd chosen space. Space to breathe, space to remember that peace isn't a gift, it's a muscle. You build it. You protect it. You keep it warm. I closed my eyes and thought of every version of myself I'd been, the people pleaser with a polite smile, the accountant of emotions, the quiet daughter who thought silence meant safety, the woman who left the party and found herself. I wanted to tell her. You did it. You saved yourself. Not with rage. Not with fire, but with a quiet, sacred no. That word had changed everything. No to being their emergency fund. No to being the invisible backbone of their chaos. No to being punished for having limits. Each no had created room for the life I was standing in now. It wasn't the cinematic revenge story I used to daydream about when I was still paying their bills and crying in the grocery aisle. No, it was better. It was peace. And peace, I've learned, is the slowest, kindest form of revenge there is. Back home later that night, I walked through my apartment, quiet, warm, mine, the same lamp, the same couch, the same mug, but everything looked different now because I was no longer furnishing my guilt. On the table, my sketchbook waited. I opened it to a fresh page and began to draw, not people this time, not memories, Just light at a lamp, a window, a faint line of dawn. The pencil moved on its own, like my hand already knew what healing looked like. When I finished, I wrote underneath in small cursive. Peace lives where permission used to be. I stared at the words until my throat tightened, then I smiled, small, private, complete. Weeks passed, and life unfolded gently. Laurel sent me updates about her students. 16s learning to edit videos without filters, without lies. One of them, she said, had built a short film called Unfollow. Mom and Dad mailed me photos of their first self-paid vacation, a small cabin in Estes Park, paid in cash, planned by themselves. The picture made me laugh. Dad squinting, Mom waving her hat like she'd just conquered adulthood at 65. On the back of the postcard, Mom had written, "No Wi-Fi. But we figured out the coffee maker. Love you." That, right there, was redemption, not dramatic, but earned. Some nights I still think about the girl I was at that Christmas party, the one holding cold cookies while everyone else unwrapped glittering lies. That I want to reach through time, take her trembling hands, and whisper. You don't need to prove you're good by going broke, you don't need to buy your way into love, you don't need to keep paying for your own erasure. Love that demands your depletion isn't love, it's dependency wearing perfume. And the moment you stop supplying it, the world doesn't end. That it just rearranges itself around your truth. One Saturday morning, I met Mandy at our usual cafe. That we sat by the window, sunlight spilling across the table. She studied my face for a moment and said, "You look different. Lighter." "I think I finally understand something," I said. "What's that?" "That forgiveness isn't giving them a second chance. It's giving myself a first one." She smiled. "So, what now?" I thought about it, about art, and travel, and the simple magic of having a future that belongs only to me. "I'm going to keep living quietly," I said. And loudly enough for my soul to hear it. We clinked mugs. The sound was small but perfect, like punctuation at the end of a sentence that had taken years to write. Later that evening, I stood at my window watching the city lights flicker like tiny heartbeats. Denver breathed below me, cars moving, people crossing, lives colliding, and somewhere in that hum, I felt gratitude. For every bill I'd paid that taught me my worth, for every yes that showed me the power of no, for every tear that carved room for clarity. The stars above looked exactly the same as the year before, but I was no longer the same woman staring up at them. I wasn't the bank. That I wasn't the background. That I wasn't the backup plan. That I was the story, my own story. And I'd finally learned how to spend wisely, not money, but time, energy, love. If I could leave one truth behind for whoever hears this, it would be this: you can love your family and still walk away from the roles that break you, you can be kind without being used, you can forgive without reopening the door, and you can choose yourself, fully, quietly, unapologetically, and call it peace. Because peace isn't selfish. It's sacred. It's the sound of your own life finally breathing right. I picked up my pencil one more time and wrote across the bottom of my last sketch. To anyone who's ever been the reliable one, it's okay to rest. I closed the book, turned off the light, and let the quiet fill every corner. No buzzing phones. No angry calls, just stillness, the sound of a woman who finally came home to herself. And if this story resonates with you, if you've ever stood in a room full of people who took your giving for granted, if you've ever realized your silence was funding someone else's comfort, then take this as your sign. Cancel what doesn't serve you, unsubscribe from guilt, start budgeting your energy like it's the most valuable currency you'll ever own, because it is. And remember, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's becoming so peaceful, they no longer have access to disturb it. So if this story touched something inside you, share it, leave your thoughts below, and tell me, have you ever had to walk away from being the reliable one just to become real again? I'll be here, reading every comment, quietly cheering for the you who finally said enough. Because sometimes, enough is the first honest word we ever speak.